Okay. I am so over a lot of this that I'm not even going to bother with my, intro. But basically, in today's video, I've been trying to think of the things that are wrong with this game, and there's quite a handful. But I think right now I want to touch on what I think are the two main ones right now. Maybe it's just because I'm feeling this way at the moment, and maybe it's more these are the two biggest problems right now. I'll discuss that later on at some point in time. But for today's topic, I want to talk about the two things that are, I think, the most wrong with MTG Arena right now. And number one is this deck right here. This cancerous garbage needs to be fixed. And honestly, I would really like if Wizards somehow did like a hot fix on this before, um, rotation in October. Honestly, all they got to do is maybe get rid of Lava Runner. I don't know. They got to get rid of something, because something to hit the consistency of this deck so that it doesn't show up in, like, not this one. Which one is it? So that it doesn't show up in every, like, 5 or 4 out of 7 of these games right here. Because here's what I did. I actually started playing Constructed Event, because I made a gate deck, which is actually very fun, and maybe I'll talk about it a little bit in this video, um, and then maybe allude into the next issue that the game faces, that I might lead into in the next video. But I started playing Constructed, and I actually did very well. The first time I played, I actually got all the way up to 7 wins. And then every time since, I must have played 3 or 4 Constructed events with the 500 gold. I had a little bit of gold saved up, and I played it with my gate deck. And at least 7 of the 20, not even 20 games, no. At least 7 of the less than 15 games, so around 50% of the decks that I played in single game fashion, as is the case with all the 7-win events, whatever they are. 7 of those decks, at least half of the decks, or almost half of the decks that I played, were this mono red burn horseshit. And I probably lost 6 out of those 7 games. I might have won 1 if I was lucky. And I could go into why this deck is fucking horrible. Um, I mean, the short version is it's all cheap spells to the point to where you can just run an absurdly low number of lands. Apparently this deck used to be a lot worse, and they fixed the algorithm somehow so that, you couldn't just get away with running like 13 lands, which is the original variant. But basically, the deck runs an absurdly low amount of lands, and you can run the deck with 1 to 2 lands no problem. And the Chain Whirler and the Experimental Frenzy are like the odd guys out of this mix. But basically what you do is you just run your cheap spells all day. You play your Firebrands, your Lava Runners. You have all of your cheap burn spells right here. Then you have Wizard's Lightning, which costs just 1 red if you have basically Pyromancer or the Lava Runner out. And Skewer the Critics, which is also 1 red. All you have to do is either, ping them with the Firebrand for 1, or swing in with something, and if they don't block or have no monsters to block you, play it for 1. Here you go, take 3. And then there's this little guy right here, which it basically... So, again, same thing, Spectacle. You do 1 damage to him, at least, you can pay a cost for 1. So if you're stuck with 1 land, you'll be fine, because you You drop this after you do some form of damage. You exile the top 2 cards, which is basically drawing 2 because you can play them. And the thing that you can play, like you can play the cards that are exiled. That includes lands. So you're drawing into 3 times as many lands as you would normally draw. You know, you get your 1-turn draw. So you exile it 2. If you exile a land, sweet, you play it. And then that's one of the ways to just get your lands up. The other main way is this guy right here, Runaway Steamkin. As long as you have 2 lands, when you play a red spell, he gets a counter. Remove 3 counters, add 3 red. So if you can run this deck with 2 lands and play the whole game. And that's all you need because Steamkin takes care of the rest of it. That's how you wind up dropping the Experimental Frenzy, which again is like a draw card because you can just play what's on top of your deck. And that's the other reason you run so little lands, because you want to have a better ratio. You don't want to hit lands all the time. You want to hit more want to hit one of those more 1-cost spells, because that's another thing that's a damn problem with this deck is with the Steamkin out, if you're playing, 1-cost spells, shocks, Wizard's Lightning, skewer the critics after you've done damage, light up the stage, you're putting back literally every one of those mana you're using to spend. Almost. The only outliers are like more Steamkins and like Pyromancer and Lightning Strike. I mean, of course, Whirler and the Frenzy, but already went over those. So this deck is a problem when this deck litters the constructed play where people are just trying to play to get some gold back. If you play 7 games and you win them, congrats, you've won yourself 50 cents worth of, in-game currency, basically, is what it equates to. That's how much you benefit from it. Of course, you get your 2 rares, which is nice. So, you're not gaining that much money, but if you get to there, it's enjoyable. But when you play 50% mono red horseshit and you just suck up all of your allowed losses with this bullshit matchup in games that aren't free, that's a problem. You're creating... I understand, like, you have to make money as a company, Wizards, and I understand, and this is something that I'll get into later, about part of the things that I feel they're doing wrong with the Arena engine. But allowing this deck to exist is definitely one of them, because it adds to creating a shittier end user experience. Because again, if you're a free to player like me, mostly, I mean, I got the $5 what do you call it, welcome pack on this account. That's kind of worth it, so I went ahead and did it. But if you're mostly a free to play user like myself, and you have a decent-ish deck, or you've decided to build a deck that's pretty strong, you feel, and are able to build a deck that's pretty strong, and you come up against this deck 50% of the time, because here's what's happening. People who have like suffered against this deck and or experienced how broken it is, they're just running through those best of 1 or best of 3 if they feel like doing it that way, but probably more likely best of 1. They're just running it through the best of 1 constructed play events, and just bam, bam. Because not only is it fast, but its win rate is through the roof. And if you just keep playing that, you'll have fun kicking the shit out of your opponent most of the time. And probably most of the time getting all the way to those 7 wins. Your win-loss ratio is so good, you can probably get to win 4 or 5 most of the time, if not all the time. And that's why those events are riddled with this deck, because the win-loss ratio is just so high compared to other ones that it's dominating that grind that people are doing, the getting the free gold, which again, once you finish it, you're only getting 50 cents at the end of it, basically, and, a few cards. But if that's the only deck that you're able to play in order to have fun playing that part of the game, that's a problem. And Wizards needs to fix it. They probably won't, because it's just going to rotate. Well, actually, The Wizard's Lightning will rotate out, so that'll probably help it a lot. Same thing with the Chain Whirler. Um, it'll get slowed down after and the Lava Runner, yeah. It'll get slowed down if not completely stopped after rotation. So they probably won't do anything with it, to be honest, but that's a real shame because they need to. Um, when you have a group of people that you're trying to bring into the game and show them how fun it can be, you fail at your job miserably when you allow this kind of meta to exist. And it shouldn't be allowed to happen. And yet here we are. And it's creating a very negative end user experience. So that's problem number one, is that this deck sucks and is completely unfair. And the fact that I've played almost half of the decks I played when I played, what was it? Constructed event for this, measly 500 gold. When over half of them were that deck, it was like 3 in a row at one point I played, and then just like 2 in a row, and then 1 here and 1 there. It was awful. If that's the meta, if that's the dominating meta, there's a problem, and you need to come up with a solution desperately, and they don't have it. They don't see it. They're not doing anything about it, and it's not good for the people they're trying to convert over to Paper Magic, or hell, even the people that are just trying to win, the people that they could convert into spending real cash on the game. It is a giant hindrance to that. Anyway, I'm going in circles here. So, I wanted to talk about the second thing. Oh, real quick note. This is kind of just me bitching, but if this is the meta and people want to play it, the sad thing is they're going to have to waste a lot of their wild cards to create it. And I mean, you can if you want to, but this was a challenger deck. Most of this was a challenger deck. I think the only thing that wasn't part of the challenger deck was the light up the stage and skewer the critics. Maybe the frenzy. I can't recall exactly, but maybe the frenzy. But anyway, the point that I was making, it was in challenger decks, and there's no code for you to redeem this deck. Like, there's codes to redeem the War of the Spark decks, Gideon and Jace and everything else that's exclusive to that set, and all the other releases that, here's your little code to redeem the same thing online. Doesn't exist for this deck. So, like, even if you wanted to at least try to, tit for tat whoever you're potentially going up against, so it at least seems a little more fair, have a better win-loss ratio, make it worth your time, make it less of a grind, make it less bullshit. In order to do that, you're going to have to buy in to this deck that's A, rotating out in a few months, and B, has a target on its back, because this is what you need to play in any of those events to not die. And the fact, again, this is just me bitching about it, because I guess it was around the time that they didn't start putting codes maybe in the decks, because this game's only, what, half a year old? Maybe a little more? So, I get it, but it's just, when I heard it was a challenger deck, I was like, oh boy, maybe I can just go put like a $5 code in and go buy a code, put it in, have most of the deck, craft the rest. Nope, no code. You gotta spend your wild cards on that cancerous crap. So, anyway, the second thing that I think is very, very wrong with the game is this right here. This ranking system. Now, real quick, if y'all haven't built this deck, this is definitely worth building. Gates is a very fun deck. This is my personal build. If you do end up building the deck, maybe I'll just make a separate video about this. Sure, I'll just make a separate video. Screw it. I'll talk about it later. So stick around for that video. Stick around. Watch for that video, I guess. Don't just sit in your chair for the next 48 hours or however long it takes me. Gates is a very fun deck. Worth your wild cards if you want to build it. So, this is the second thing that really is wrong with this system, with the game. The way that rank ups work is you start at bronze, and they all have the same 6 notches here. I'm sorry that I don't have a better example here, but they all have the same 6 notches here. And each game you win, you lose a notch, or each game you win, you gain a notch. Each game you lose a notch. For bronze, it's different. You gain 2 notches with each win, and 0 for a loss. And silver, it's 2 notches with the win and 1 for a loss. And then when you hit gold, that's when it's an even 1-to-1 exchange. Now, I already don't agree with that because I feel like they could have done a better job doing that. Like once, as a new player, once you clear the first 2 tiers, which are already like designed to help you clear them with some ease, you can't go down in rank here. You only lose half of a rank of which you gain here. And then for the next 4 ranks, it's just an even 1-to-1 exchange. That doesn't make any sense. This needed to be a little bit better thought out. Like, for example, maybe add a few more tiers if you did it this way so that you still had to gain the same amount of wins. But say like at bronze, you got 3 notches for a win and then lost 1 for a loss. And then silver, you got 3 notches for a win. And oh, I'm sorry, no, I misspoke. So for bronze, you'd get 3 notches for a win. Again, adding in more ranks so that you have to have just as many wins to get to silver, for example. But so for bronze, have 3 notches for a win, 0 notches for a loss. Silver, 3 notches for a win, 1 notch for a loss. Gold, 3 notches for a win, 2 notches for a loss. And then maybe start the 1-for-1 exchange here. And if you had a good enough system, maybe even like for Mythic, again, you'd have to make sure that the system was done well enough. But if you did a good enough system, make it so that Mythic was like 1 notch for 1 win and 2 notches lost for a loss. Because, I mean, it is Mythic. But anyway, that's beside the point. The system they have here is pretty bad right now, the way it is, and that's just the way that I do it differently. But just based on how they have everything set up right now, here's the biggest hindrance as to why the game is not enjoyable. Of course there's mono red, but that pollutes more the constructed event. Whether it's traditional or constructive, I'm sure it's in traditional too, but I don't like playing matches. It pollutes mostly this, but I have seen it several times in ranked. Quite a few. I'd say it's probably half as prevalent there as it is in anyone that's playing for money. But the biggest problem with this system is if you've noticed, if you've gotten high enough to where it's either silver or gold, and if you've noticed you don't always rank down, first of all, that's its own problem. Okay? Ranking down is stupid. What's the point of the tier if you go up in the tier and then you just go back down in the rank? Okay, it's just dumb. But I kind of sort of see where they're coming at, because let's say you rank up, all right? Let's say you're at gold rank 1. Okay, say you're at gold rank 1 and you have no notches and you lose. That's okay. You don't go down in rank. Let's say you lose again. You're still safe. Let's say you lose again. You're still safe. You get 3 losses that protect you from going back down into the next rank. Whenever you rank up, whatever that rank is, whenever you rank up to anything that's not another tier, because you can't go down in tiers anyway, or I'm sorry, whenever you rank up to anything that's not a different color or status or whatever you want to call it, platinum, gold, silver, whatever, as long as you're ranking up not into another bracket, let's call it, you are protected from 3 losses in that tier. But here's the big fucking stupid caveat. The only place that you're protected in those losses from losing anything is the start of that tier. So if you were in, for example, let's say I play some platinum here. Let's say I get a win, super. But then I get a loss right after the win. Well, that win that I just got for that notch goes away. Let's say I get another loss. I'm protected because I have 3 remaining safeguards in place for the beginning of that tier. But, if I'm all the way up here, about to rank up to the next tier, let's just say I'm a platinum run and about to rank up to pearl, or whatever the hell it's called. If I'm here and I just need one more win and I lose, that notch isn't protected and I go back down. And so I have to then get 2 more losses to get back to I'm sorry, not 2 more losses. I have to get 2 more wins to get to where I almost was. I have to get 1 more win to get back to where I was, and then a win after that to go to the next tier. And the fact that the loss just isn't globally protected is so stupid. Like, that could have been how you made the system, honestly. That could have been your system right there. At bronze, they get, 5 universal protections, or 6, or whatever it is you wanted to do. And at any point, and then you lose 1 with each tier. But the fact that you're only protected right here if you're at the start is completely ridiculous. And what doesn't help it is that, yeah, if you're knocked down a tier and, you're forced to start over again, all you got to do is get 1 more win to get back up to the tier you were just at, and then you'll be protected again, right? Right. But if you lose 1 when you're knocked down, that's still in the not protected state. So now you have to get 2 wins to get back up to the next tier. And it's the dumbest shit ever. Like, the fact that there's protection only at the beginning of the rank is completely absurd. And I don't understand why there wasn't some kind of protection somewhere along the line. Like, if you wanted to have that, fine, but give us like 1 or 2. Give us like 1 protection from going down in the ranks, and then like 2 others here. Just the fact that you're only protected if you have no rank ups in your present tier is completely stupid. Because I just got to platinum, and I'm honestly shocked that I got to platinum, because I've been playing this deck and it is very fun. Trust me. Don't get me wrong there. It is a very fun deck, but it would have been a lot less stressful if I didn't have to worry about this. Because I was right here at gold tier level 3, or level 1, I mean, right? And I was like, alright, I need just 1 more win. But the amount of stress and the amount of negative experience you have with that when it's just, I need 1 more win, but if I lose 1, and I'm not protected in any way, like, it doesn't scale right. Like, the fact that you can feel completely safe right here, but that it almost literally doesn't matter, because at any point when you lose here, it just feels like, wow, well, that was completely worth it. It doesn't average to a good user experience, a good end user experience, because if you just had 3 protections at any point, you're going to have more enjoyable games. But if you get here to this point in the tier and then you lose and it's not protected, it's a different effect. So I guess all that I'm trying to get at is this protection nonsense that you have at the beginning of a rank that was not well thought out, and you're creating a lot of pissed off people when you're trying to get them to like your game. And you're already massively handicapped as the game Magic the Gathering because of your land issues. I'll just leave it at that, because that's I don't even understand. How do I put this? That's one of the bigger problems with the game as a whole that I know has to be addressed in some level, and their answer to it every rotation just seems to be, some type of dual type land that goes good with the meta. Right now, I mean, I haven't been playing long, but a veteran friend of mine says it's like no more broken than any other formats, but to me it just seems kind of ridiculously overpowered to have 2 types of dual lands. One that's a shock land where you can pay 2 life to have it come into play untapped, whose lands are always both types of those lands. So if you have a mountains and a plains, shit, I don't remember what that one's called. Say you have a forest and an island, so you have a breeding pool, that shockland breeding pool. It's counted as a forest and an island, and that's broken as shit, because the other group of lands is when this land comes into play that can tap, the blue or the green, with of course some crossover. it comes into play tapped unless you control an island or a forest. Well, guess what? If you're running those other dual lands that both count as both, your mana efficiency is off the charts. But anyway, that's beside the point. Lands are a big issue with this game, but the fact that you're already hindered by that and continuously trying to figure out how to solve that issue, the fact that you have one of the most ridiculous rank up systems is beyond me. I don't like I'm sure a lot of people appreciate that you can get losses at the beginning of a tier and still be protected up to 3 times, because then it would be completely pointless to have tiers, because it's just like, what's the point of the tiers if you have to go up, if you have to get 26 wins, just say get 20, I'm sorry, 26, 24 wins. If you have to get 24 wins, then you just say get 24 wins. The tiering system is completely pointless. But with some protection in place, it's not quite that pointless. But the fact that it's only at the beginning, oh man, someone wasn't thinking when they did that. That's basically all I have for this. I just wanted to do a video about my experience and how awful it was getting to platinum, because of just the lack of protection in having your ranks go down. It's just you could have designed a much better system. To be honest, I'd be completely for what I said. If you had some kind of a system that where if you want to get the highest rank in Mythic, like your deck has to be good enough to have a win-loss ratio that's like 2-1. You know, winning 1 gets you 1 notch, losing 1 loses you 2. If the other 5 tiers are doable, if the other 5 tiers are make more sense, have more safeguards, because again, yes, you're always going to have your pro level players, but you're going to have the free to players that are like, you know, if you shaft them too early on and hit them with the reality stick that is give us money, give us money, give us money so you can win, it's not a good system, and you're going to be driving away more people than you're attracting. And it just should be more thought through. That's all I got for this one. Last little touch on topic that I said I might go over was the one of the issues, another one of the issues that the game faces, and I'll just touch on it really quick, is the idea. It's both a positive and a negative that you have wild cards in this game. Positive being, you know, you don't have to pull that mythic to have it. You can craft it. You don't have to pull that rare to have it. You can craft it. But the negative then is, if you want to build anything budget, like gates, you know, this deck would cost me like $10 in real life. 50 if you count the 2 Krasis that are in here, okay? But the rest of it, $10 and that's it. But I had to use up like almost 20 uncommon wild cards. Okay, and if you want to build a budget deck that has some rares and a mythic or two, it doesn't make any sense when you could just save it up for a more broken, more meta deck that's in the current format. Just save up and make that. So the game already naturally doesn't allow for too much skill / variance, because if people are just naturally going to be put in that situation to say, well, you know, you can use a handful of wild cards to craft a budget deck, or you can use a handful of wild cards to craft a meta deck, people are going to go with the meta deck because you want to be able to get your wins out of the wild cards that you're using up. So just a quick preview of what will eventually be my next ramble video about what's wrong with the game that they should think about more, fix, you know, who knows. So yeah, stay tuned for that. Watch for that, I should say, not stay tuned. Watch for that update. Watch for another update where I will talk about gates, because again, it is a very fun, interesting deck, worth looking into. So that's all I got for that. DDR guy out. Eventually, just it's very hard. Okay, DDR guy not so out just yet. it's hard to justify continuing to try to grind ranks at a certain point because it's just not worth. You just win, lose, win, lose, win, lose. 50 games into the future, if you're around the same exact point as when you started, what the hell was the point? And that's especially true with the constructed event because you're just gonna find mono red that suck up your allowed losses. All I got, DDR guy out, Wizards fix mono red.